to the Soholiff Spotlights, and I'm joined today with a really, really important and very special guest. I'm absolutely delighted and honoured to have Stella Assange join me today.
Thank you.
Oh, and Stella is here to speak about our film Ithaka, which is a film about Julian Assange. And just thank you so much for coming down, because this is just such an important film. I'm just wondering, could you possibly just tell us a little bit what the film is about, and who you are as well, please?
Well, I'm the wife of Julian Assange. We got married in March, but I've known Julian since 2011, and we became a couple in 2015. And after he was arrested from the Ecuadorian embassy and taken to Belmarsh prison, we were just, his family were thinking, how can we get people to understand what is happening? And so his brother, who's a producer on the film, my brother is also a producer, and his father, and I decided, we embarked on a project to initially just kind of document what we were doing, what we were trying to do to free Julian, and with a view to this becoming a film. But it was really a kind of a leap of faith that we just started documenting it, and in the hope that it would become a film.
And it really has. It's a brilliant, brilliant piece of work which explains a lot of things. There's so much more, obviously, but there's a lot of people now, a younger audience especially, who might not even know what's happened. For our younger audience, are you able to maybe just explain really why Julian's been arrested and why he's being held and for how long and what this means?
Well, Julian's been imprisoned essentially because he embarrassed the most powerful people in the world, the people who were responsible and have an interest in conducting war in various places around the world. But in the US, the Iraq and Afghan wars that WikiLeaks published and exposed. And it led to huge policy changes as a result of those publications. Julian published documents that basically gave an anatomy of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan in 2010. And also published a video of a war crime. And that really connected people to what was happening in Iraq. Because by then, all the reports coming out of Iraq, it was 7 years on in the war, were hugely sanitized. And here came WikiLeaks with data about how many civilian killings there had been, data about the wounded, data about, truly the anatomy of the war, unvarnished, and the carnage. And this could not be denied. The Pentagon and so on, they have PR offices who massage the information, and WikiLeaks just cut through that with all the facts. And essentially, the United States government and its allies have conducted a huge propaganda war on Julian, his person, his reputation, to lead to a point where he could be arrested. And he is, legally speaking, being prosecuted for having done journalism, for having received information from a source, and for having published it to the public. So it means that they're criminalizing journalism for the first time.
Yep.
The United States.
Because nothing's been disputed about what he's actually printed, has
That's right. Even his critics don't allege that he published anything that was untrue. It's just the unvarnished truth. And what's been done through these charges against Julian is that they're criminalizing journalism, and the charges came under the Trump administration. Of course, Trump had a very adversarial relationship to the press. Obama refused to charge Julian for these publications about Iraq and Afghanistan because the Obama administration said there's no way of going after Julian Assange without also setting a precedent, meaning without setting up a new standard, a new legal rule that will allow future governments to go after other press. And so the Obama administration was not prepared to do that, but the Trump administration was. And so this is the most dangerous and lasting legacy of the Trump administration. And it really, it represents such a massive attack on the ability of journalists to do their job, of people to speak the truth. It's making the truth, speaking the truth, a crime. So the implications are much greater than, the narrow set of facts and so on of this case. It has implications for everyone.
Yeah. God, I mean, it's just such an important film, isn't it? And, in the film, of course, there's Julian's father is there as well. He's very present in it. And something that's quite clear there, for all of this that's going on for both Julian and his father, it seems very hard for them to stay positive with it. But you seem to be the person that's the rock. You seem to be who brings light and brings sense to things. How is it? How does that feel, being that person? And having to... What helps you?
Well, I mean, I have a very clear purpose. In my mind, in a way, it's easy. I just want Julian out.
And is that something that you're hoping the film can do? Is it bring people back to recognise and see what's happening? Yeah,
so the film, basically, up until when Julian was arrested, he had been silenced already for a year. The Ecuadorian embassy had gagged him from March 2018 under threat of throwing him out of the embassy. So Julian has been silenced now for over 4 years, and he isn't able to, fight back. And during this time that he was silenced, there were just relentless attacks on him in the media, including, stories that were planted, completely fabricated, attacks on his reputation, on his dignity. Really, the dignity thing is really deliberate. Because if you dehumanize a person, then you can do anything to him. So the film was there not as let's rehumanize him. It was, it was to rehumanize him, but it was also because the facts of the case kind of stand on their own. But then there's all this these relentless attacks that have influenced people, at least at the point of his arrest, where they had, they'd basically been propagandized. And this is something that UN's Special Rapporteur on Torture has written a whole book about, Niels Meltzer, The Trials of Julian Assange. It's basically that the facts stand on their own, but if you dehumanize a person, then the facts almost don't matter. So you need to reconnect people to the fact that Julian is a human being, and that he's suffering, and that we are real people, and that they see Julian through our eyes, the people who love him.
And do you think there's been a kind of conspiracy of silence with journalists who are employed by these media barons? You can put it like that. He's look. There are several things going on. The first is that, as I said, Julian was a pioneer. He brought huge innovations into how journalism was done, including in the legacy media rooms. So they've adopted these methods that Julian was the first to bring in, and they were forced to collaborate with him. Not forced. I mean, they wanted to, because WikiLeaks had the biggest scoops of the century, essentially, But then they also saw him as a reputational rival. And so as soon as they had published the big scoops, then they attacked his character, because they saw WikiLeaks as competition, essentially. And Julian is also very critical of the way the media reports, including on the WikiLeaks material. So Julian is a critic, and he's an uncomfortable critic because he's also very, very prominent. And what would you say was the biggest challenge when you were making the film?
Well, there were several. I think putting an end date to it, because obviously this is an ongoing issue. This is not a documentary in the sense that this is what happened back then. It's in the now, and it follows me and Julian's father, John, as we're going to court, and things are happening around that, and then COVID and so on, but then we wanted it to be able to be seen while Julian was still fighting extradition, because it had to be a current documentary. It has, currency, and so we just had to basically stop filming. And but also it's a very kind of intimate documentary. It comes into the home. It is, it's filming me with the kids, and it's filming us as we're confronted with various difficulties, because we had the cameras on us all the time.
You feel like we know you after watching it. It's and with Julian as well. It's amazing what you've done, and I really hope. Are you getting distribution? Do you know if that's come through at all? I'm not across that, I'm afraid. Right.
I think it is. I think there are conversations that are being had.
Yeah.
I mean, ideally,
needs
the most amount, the biggest amount of people would see it, and in this country, it's really important. I think that people see it in the UK.
Oh, Stella, thank you so much for coming in and speaking to us today, and thank you for this film, because it's an honour to have it and to screen it here. And for anybody watching this, you have to watch Ithaka. It's really, really important. And is there anything people can do to help?
Yes, so we have a campaign here in the UK called don'textraditeassange.com, and you can sign up to the newsletter that keeps you informed about the different actions. We just did an incredibly successful action. We surrounded Parliament on both sides of the Thames and both bridges. It was the first time it was ever done. We had, easily 7,000 people come together. It was amazing, and huge optimism, and people who were young and old, and students, and people had also come from Europe, and it was really encouraging.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching, and watch Ithaka.